perform the duties of the school committee
perform the duties of the school committee
according to the bylaws of the town of Hingham
according to the bylaws of the town of Hingham
and the statutes of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
and the statutes of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
What is the reference of the statement, just because with the procedures that we've outlined?
I'd like to talk about what my qualifications are to be chair. I think it's important for the audience and the people at home to hear the basis of why I self-nominated myself.
Now, just had a question to you.
Mm-hmm.
Since we've done this for since I've been on the committee 5 years, we've never had people make speeches or qualifications. We went over the process on April 27th,
Well, we didn't know who was
And-
going to be running on April 27th.
but
And
Is
since
that-
you
is-
are now challenging me to be chair, I think I should have the right to make my case to the public and to the other members.
well, let me ask you a question. Do you think this should be better off? I mean, there's no
I think it should
policy.
be done right now.
What's the harm?
Is there any harm?
Well, we do have some policies and procedures.
But there is nothing that speaks to this.
And
Just
then
like-
also, if I knew you were going to do this, is it fair to me that I should have been able to prepare
You're running
remarks?
for chair. I'm sure you can defend or suggest to the people why you should be running.
All right, well, I'm going to allow this, even though I think it's very unorthodox, because it's never happened. But if you like to have a short remark.
It's very short. It's probably about 2 minutes. Thank you. Well, I have to say, this is not the speech that I thought I'd have to make after serving as vice chair for 2 years. As with most elected and appointed boards and committees in Hingham, the vice chair provides a training ground for the role of chair. In my vice chair role, I have prepared for and attended key meetings in order to best prepare myself to step into the role of chair. Attending regularly scheduled budget forecast meetings this year, attending AdCom's education subcommittee meetings as they develop their budget recommendations, and participating in the full-day kindergarten working group. This has allowed me to develop a productive working relationship with all town counterparts. I can't imagine how difficult it would be for someone to move into the role of chair with no leadership experience as we face into the next school year. My other roles on the school committee include chairing the salary negotiation team this past year, where we successfully negotiated with 6 bargaining units to sign new 3-year contracts. I've also served as secretary, chair of policy subcommittee, and I've been a member of the high school fields oversight group. Taken together, these experiences make me uniquely qualified to be chair, as well as giving me the knowledge of how to get things done as a team and listening to my fellow committee members. Most importantly, I learned that working for the best interests of our town and for our students takes a lot of one's time and effort. It requires flexibility in your schedule to meet with school and town officials many times during business hours, and I am fortunate that my part-time practice allows me to have availability and flexibility the chair position requires. Finally, I have a good working relationship with Dr. Gallo. We don't always see eye to eye on issues, but we listen and value each other's positions. At the end of the day, we both want what is best for Hingham students, and that shared interest allows us to work productively toward that end. In order for this committee and the school department to have a successful year, it is important for the chair and the superintendent to have a strong, respectful working relationship. So before you vote tonight, I ask you to think objectively about who is best qualified to serve as chair and move us all forward in a positive direction. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll proceed with the election of chair. It's either vote for Carol Falvey or Andy Shafter. We're going to start down with Aileen, and Aileen, you will just state the name of the person you would like to vote for, and that's going to work its way around. Who do you choose to vote for, Aileen?
Andy Shafter.
Cynthia?
Andy Shafter.
Liza?
Andy Shafter.
Dr. Schreier?
Carol Falvey.
Carol Falvey?
Myself, Carol Falvey.
Ray Estes?
Carol Falvey.
I will vote for Andy Shafter. Andy Shafter has been appointed chair by a 4-3 vote. The election of vice chair. Are there any comments?
Yeah.
No, I mean, well, I did that. All right. Then we will start it the same way. Aileen, either please state for Ed Schreier or Liza O'Reilly.
Liza O'Reilly. Liza O'Reilly.
Liza?
Liza O'Reilly.
Ed?
Ed Schreier.
Ed Schreier.
Ed Schreier.
I vote for Liza O'Reilly. Liza O'Reilly is elected vice chair by a 4-3 vote. Now for the election of secretary. We will start with, we have two candidates, Aileen and Cynthia. We will start with Aileen. Aileen, how do you vote?
Aileen Calnan. Cynthia Galko.
Liza?
Cynthia Galko.
Ed Schreier?
I truthfully don't know how to vote.
You can abstain, Ed.
I'll abstain and break it if I have to. I have to abstain.
I'll vote for Aileen.
Okay.
I abstain.
Okay, so Aileen Callahan, Aileen, Cynthia. Andy. Okay. Carol, you voted for.
Aileen.
All right. I will vote for Aileen. And so that right now that is 3-2-2. And I think the way the policy reads, we need is that good, or do we need a majority of the people present?
That is a good question. I'll have to check.
Unless you'd like to reconsider your vote.
I'm just trying to help our new secretary because I said I would. Can I just have the votes of Aileen? You voted for Aileen. That makes sense. Cynthia, you voted for Cynthia. Who did you vote for?
Cynthia.
Cynthia. And Carol, you voted for?
Aileen.
Aileen. And Andy, you voted for whom?
I vote for Aileen.
Aileen. I'll vote for Aileen.
All right. Aileen is elected chair by.
Ray wants to vote.
Oh, oh, sorry. Aileen's. Ray, would you like to change your vote, or would you stay abstain?
Okay.
Aileen is elected secretary by a 4-2-1 vote. So congratulations, everyone. And before we continue on the meeting,
Right.
I cannot thank enough Ray, Carol, and Ed for their leadership last year. I know when you start thanking people, you never thank everyone, and so I'm sure I'm going to miss people. But thank you very much for everything you've done. Also, thank you to Dennis and Carol, who retired from last year. And of course, welcome our two new members, Aileen and Cynthia. And also thank you for the candidates who ran against them, because the school department is very important. So, I'm sorry, I should have waited for you, but Dr. Ed did vote. And so it was 4 for Aileen, 2 for Cynthia, and 1 for abstention.
Okay, what the policy does say is a majority of those present and voting.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so then 3-2-2 would be the official record then. Unless you, do you want to be on record as voting for? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. 4-2-1. Good. All right. Moving on to the minutes.
Just one comment on the minutes. The minutes are in writing in the packet. We did have a call in today about a correction. I didn't reprint them because I thought there might be some other things tonight, but if you look at section 7.5 of the notes, the date should be 1987, not 1997. So that's section 7.5.
I'm sorry, I should have let people change seats. That's my fault.
And that was something Liza picked up, so Ellen will record that, so if you would take your vote with that in mind.
So, I know we were moving around there. You heard Dr. Gallo, you have a correction on the minutes in section 7.5, where it's the 1987 zoning variance. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of April 27th, 2015.
Great. Do I have a second? I will second the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The minutes pass. Communications. Brad.
First, I'd like to say welcome to you two school committee members, Mrs. Callan and Mrs. Galco, and I would also like to congratulate the new chair, vice chair, and secretary. To start out, days of seniors has come down to almost single digits, with parties planned coming up soon, especially for Julia, which has made my house incredibly hectic. Also, AP exams have been throughout the entire day and in the past few weeks. The drama production, You Can't Take It With You, premiered Friday night and was the second performance on Saturday. The Bus Buddy Club will be holding its elections tomorrow. And in other election news, the Green Committee had its elections last Friday. The Stuco already had its elections. And this upcoming Friday will be the elections for new class officers for the sophomore, junior, and freshman. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m., the band and orchestra will perform their spring concert at the middle school. And finally, for proms, junior prom tickets started selling today, as well did seniors, with juniors selling their prom tickets throughout today and tomorrow. And the event will be held on this Friday night at the South Shore Country Club. And the senior prom tickets will be sold all week before school. And their prom will be held at the Boston Aquarium on May 28th. Any questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gallo.
No other communications.
Okay.
May I just answer first?
Yeah, sure.
I was going through pages. Tell me again that correction on the minutes.
So on in
7.5.
5,
Yep.
just down in the body,
Yep.
you'll see a request for a 1997 zoning variance.
Yep.
It was 1987.
Hey,
Dr. Gallo, any other thing, Dr. Ed?
no, sorry.
Okay. Dr. Gallo, the superintendent's report.
Yes, a number of things to report. Most of them are verbal.
Questions and comments from the audience.
I asked Dr. Gallo that.
No, you asked about communications.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any other
I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
But there were no questions.
so when I said, was there, okay.
Comments.
Are there any questions or comments?
No,
Okay, fair enough.
thanks.
I have a comment.
Yes. The chair recognizes Ray.
I have grave concern about that election. This is one of 3 key boards in this town that governs: the selectmen, the advisory committee, and the school committee. The fact that Carol was not elected chair based on her experience is a travesty, and I'm gravely disappointed. Second, I feel that this board will not be taken seriously this year as a result.
Ray, I'd like to interrupt you. If you're gonna make
Third.
comments, make them. You can talk generally. To personally attack people, I don't think that's this forum.
And third, I have significant concerns about the way the town election for a school committee was conducted and the behavior of certain members on this committee in campaigning for other members running for office. I think it suggests impropriety and perhaps a quid pro quo, and I'm very disappointed. Very disappointed.
I would say that there's a lot of things on the policy
I
that
don't
we
need
should.
a response from you. I was making a comment.
So, and I would now like to make a comment that I agree there are some things that we should look into and revise our policies and take under consideration, and I look forward to doing that. Are there any questions or comments? Dr. Gallo, the superintendent's report.
Yes, full-day kindergarten update. At this point, we have fully enrolled, and that means people have submitted all their financial information and the deposit. So the fully enrolled count at this point is 266 students. We believe that the total is going to be a little over 280 when the remaining packets come in. But based upon the 266 who are, well, actually it's 270 because there are 4 half-day people. But based upon the packets that have come in, 226 of the 266 are a total $791,000. Remember, our target is $844,000. The additional tuitions that are partial tuitions add up to, with the 791, 823, 875,000. That brings us pretty close to the target. And with the remaining packets that are yet to come in, our ratio has been about 80% of the packets that come in are full tuition packets. So based upon that, it seems that we're going to make the target that we had. And that's a good thing. We are going to need, because of the way the student enrollments break, we are going to need 15 sections, and that was what we had anticipated, but we had hoped that if we had fewer than 300, we might be able to reduce the number of sections by 1. Does not look as if that's possible. It may be necessary to add a 16th session, again, because of the way the numbers break. But in that same building where we are concerned because we're right at the 2021 figure now, we do have at this point a smaller first grade. So it may be that as we'll take some more time to look at that, but that in one building we may simply switch the number of first grades with the number of kindergarten. That would allow us to go forward with the funding that we have and would not impact the bottom line. So that's a happy piece of news. There are 4 students who have elected the half-day option. That's a much smaller number than we had anticipated. It thrills me for 2 reasons. One is that you all know that my preference was for a full-day kindergarten for all. We could not require one for all because we were not providing the funding for it. So the fact that as many students as have elected the full-day program is great because of my concern about an equitable education for all kids, but also from a practical reality that as our children enter grade 1, we'll have a much larger number of kindergartners going to grade 1, except for new people who may move in next summer that will get the same basic preparatory education. So that's a good news story. We had what I think is going to be the last official meeting of the full-day kindergarten committee this afternoon. The teacher members will continue to meet with and to deal mainly with Ellen about the planning and professional development. And the public members who were added this fall because of the requirement for the grant will not meet again. We talked about meeting again early in the fall for 2 reasons. One is to see how things are going, to give some thought to what might be a budget piece of input from that committee as we begin the new budget process. And then perhaps meet again for a time that we would evaluate the program at the end of next year. So that's a happy story from my perspective, and a lot of credit in terms of the budget being as on target as it is goes to the little oversight committee that we had, which was Ray and Carol and Liza, in particular to Liza, for coming up with a lot of the data on which we made our recommendation. So thank you for that. Next topic, Social Studies Director appointment. I think I did announce this on the meeting of the 27th, but because that was not televised and this is a leadership position, I did want to make it public at this meeting, and that is that we have appointed Andy Hoy, who was in Hingham as a social studies teacher until 2 years ago when he moved to Duxbury to become the social studies director there. And Andy was one of 4 candidates. He was unanimous choice of the screening committee, the interview committee that we had, and so he will replace Jim Kirkcaldy. And certainly he knows he has big shoes to replace, but he knows most of the players because he was there as recently as 2 years ago, and we're very excited about that appointment. Let's see, with respect to enrollment, the enrollment projections for all of the grades we spoke to last Monday when Ellen and I met with all of the elementary principals. We went over grade by grade how many students we anticipated would be here. The number is slightly more than we thought it would be at the time that we prepared the budget, but still a bit less than last year's, close to, but a bit less than last year's enrollment. And so we'll be monitoring that as we go forward. And the principals will begin their interviewing process for hiring. We don't anticipate a lot of hiring this year except at the kindergarten because most of the other things that we put in the budget, we've had to take out of the budget in terms of personnel. But I think that we'll be able to serve these classes well. As you remember, we eliminated during the budget process early on one of the existing sections of elementary as a way of reducing budget. So we've done that, and that was reducing one of the classes that we had that have 5 sections. So moving forward in those. The K-1 transition number is a bit lower than it's been the last few years. That could be just a function of the timing, but it also could be a function of the fact that the current year's kindergarten is smaller by 50 than the prior year, so one would therefore expect that the children, as they go forward from K-1, that number of new students would be smaller than one might expect. 246 kids, then having 40 youngsters added in is perhaps reasonable, although prior years were higher. So again, not quite sure what that means. I left another flyer. Some of you are probably tired of getting this information because I think you got it in your light bill over the last week about the Mass Memories Roadshow. It's this coming Sunday, and you'll remember from the flyer that you can bring, any citizen can bring up to 3 pictures or some other artifact that they want to have digitized. There's also an opportunity for someone to actually sit and be taped describing the object that they brought. I would like to have all of those pictures of all the schools behind my desk, but I can only bring 3 photos. I have asked each of the principals, not just elementary, to work with a PTO, and hopefully each of the current schools will be represented by a PTO person bringing something. But I still have lots of pictures, so if any of you are dying to do this between 10 and 3 on Sunday afternoon, please come. I would be glad to loan you one of my pictures to show and give you a little update, most of it from my own memory, that you can explain. So, and you know, I know that you've seen the flyer before, but we're really trying to get, in this last week, word of mouth out. I've been on that committee since last fall, and really trying to stimulate some interest in people attending the roadshow. You have the flyer, and there are also some over on the table if any of the audience folks would like to take one and come. 10 to 3, Sunday, here, 2nd floor, double room. And last, the past couple of years, I have done a written update on the goals that I've set at the beginning of the year. For maybe most of the time since I've been the superintendent, we've had superintendent/school committee goals that we've come to work on together, to determine and work on together. because of the new educator evaluation system, to which I am, held responsible, there have to be goals that the superintendent sets, and they have to be in certain categories. And so for the first time this year, the goals were superintendent goals that were approved by the school committee. School committee had an opportunity to weigh in, and they came to consensus on those. So I sent them to you over the weekend. They are in the packet you've got tonight. We have a long agenda, so there's no particular need for you to respond. It was just a written update. We'll have a full report on those goals as part of the evaluation in the fall, but they are there, and if there's something that you need to ask or say, I would entertain that. Other than that, if you had individual questions, we can do that in deference to the length of the agenda.
Well, I read them. It looks like you've been making good progress, so.
Except on that one goal, about how to manage the email.
Yeah,
Paper.
So
if
we all need
you
to-
solve that goal, I think you could
But you know what
make
we
a good
need?
app for that and
But you know
do
what we
well
do
for
need?
yourself.
You should state what the goal is that she's referring to.
Okay, well, we had a goal of trying better to manage the workload in this office, and one of the big pieces of that has to do with the amount of email we get, and with folks that perhaps are using email for something that would be better discussed or explained or talked about in either a meeting or on phone, and we haven't been terribly successful in that. On the other hand, I'm glad you mentioned that, Liza, because under the same goal is something about being more efficient at meetings. And Ellen and I have talked a lot. We've got some input from peer superintendents, and we've gone online to check out websites on software for running a paperless meeting. I'm not sure we need software. I think we could just do it by email or Google Docs or something like that. So then Liza had a great suggestion. We're going to have a lot of Chromebooks that sit around during the summer unused. And so the thought was, perhaps if the committee were willing, we could assign school committee members out for the summer a Chromebook. And we could explore in our 2 summer meetings, which tend to be shorter in length, the idea of a paperless agenda, and everybody could get to experience what it would be like. And then if it were something that the school committee wanted to do, which would reduce tremendously the packet, the amount of information that we even have to bring to meetings, because it would all be in front of you and you'd have a common tool, then we could explore providing school committee members with their own Chromebook, because they are not an expensive tool at all. And that would give some of you who have multiple people in a family and not as many computers as people a way to manage the school committee business that way. So you don't have to get an answer today, but give some thought to that idea, and certainly before the summer begins, let me know whether or not that's something that there's consensus on doing.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr.
Ed,
Gell?
speak up.
I think that's a great idea.
And we could have a little training, too.
A lot of training. And stuff. I did some house cleaning this past week, cleaning out old binders. Holy moly. I think that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Glad I thought of it.
Actually, it was Liza's idea.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Dr. Geller? Does anybody from the audience have any questions? Good. Moving on to number 6, unfinished business. To consider approval of the proposed school calendar for 2015-2016.
Okay, so.
Any comments on that, Dr. Geller?
Yes, so most of you have seen this because we started about 3 meetings ago, just kind of putting it out there for some thought, because, mainly because Labor Day is late this year, and with the winter we had, there's concern about what that might mean for the future. Also, at the same time that I put it out there for comments from the school committee, I sent the what would have been the calendar if we just followed past practice, and I sent that to Alec Porter, president of the HEA, and he's discussed that with his board and did a survey as well. My consensus and recommendation to you, which is, I think, echoes what Andy would say, is to leave school start as the day after Labor Day. Starting earlier, the week earlier, which we would have to have consensus with the union for anyway, because there is language in the contract, specific language about starting with kids the day after Labor Day, would only have picked us up an additional, I think, 2 days. And as a matter of fact, in the coming calendar, even though we start later, we automatically pick up 2 more days of school, because this year's Christmas break would be a 7-school-day break. And the past 2 years has been an 8-school-day break. As well, this is a leap year coming up, and in a leap year, you gain an additional day, so that we have that advantage. This calendar is different a bit from what you saw the last time, not in terms of starting and ending point, but in terms of release days. Ellen has gone over what the release days would be. We found out something that we perhaps should have known, but didn't, and that is there is a presidential primary March 1st. And so because of that, the middle school and the high school would have on that day a late start, which seems to work well on election days. It allows for that rush of voters who want to come in to vote before they go to work, and so we would make that change just in those 2 buildings, because of course those are the only buildings where voting occurs. Other than that, starting date for students would be on the 1st. The starting date for new teachers to the district and the orientation would be on August 31st and September 1st. Did I say school starting on the 1st?
Yeah.
Sorry, it would be on the 8th, yeah. And on the 1st would be the returning teachers would come back. That's our practice over the last many, many years. And the 180th day of school would be the 17th. This year, the 180th day was the 15th originally, and of course we all know what happened then. So that's the proposal for the calendar. Separate from that, and something that Alec and I have said we would talk about, Alec with his board, and I've mentioned it here, is that the possibility that we might collaboratively decide that if we got in trouble, similar to this year, and we could pick a date, March 1st or whatever, suppose we had used 4 or 5 days, then is there any merit in saying now what the makeup process would be, so that we don't have to make such a rush decision as we did last year and fully discuss it. So Alec was going to discuss that with the board. I think that there were a number of people here who indicated they would like to talk about that, but the proposal is only about the calendar, and we can determine later, even into the fall, if we were going to make the other change. So.
And you would like a vote on this?
Requires a vote.
Yes,
require a vote,
yes,
yes.
that's our policy says at the first May meeting each year.
Good.
Okay.
Does anybody want to make a motion on the calendar?
I'll make a motion that we approve the 2015-2016 calendar.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Great. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It approves, 7-0.
Thank you.
Moving to 7.1, discuss subcommittee assignment process and timeline. Would you like me to go, or do you want to start off?
Well, I would just say, I
Okay.
think I put in your annotated notes that certainly we have some business that we have to take care of pretty quickly. The most important thing being, we owe Sue Escuela an answer to their request for adding grades. And that is, by our practice, a function of the community outreach committee, subcommittee, and that includes a visit to the school before school ends. And so for that reason, and also the fact that we have a couple of policy things that now are on our agenda, not by our choice, but are there because of mandates and changes in law. So I would hope that, given that the next school committee meeting isn't till the 1st, that you could set a date by which you'd like some input from the committee, and then could make that decision. Does not need to meet, because it's solely your decision, doesn't need to be at a meeting, that you might be able to make a decision and get that out somewhere within the next 10 days or so.
When does that school when is their season end, or when is their school year end?
It's a bit before us, but not much.
Okay, so,
before.
okay, so they're into
It's only
June.
like a day
Yeah.
or two before. So the sooner we can go, the better.
So everyone, if you see the list there of what the committees are and who is on the committee, please let me know if everyone could have this to me by Friday, that'd be wonderful. Friday at noon, that'd be great, and then we can go from there. Does anyone have any questions on the subcommittee assignment process or timeline? Otherwise, we're going to keep moving on.
There were 2 liaison ones, I think I noted, down near the bottom that were for temporary committees. They don't need to be on the list any longer because that job is done.
Wonderful.
Those jobs are done.
Now for the stuff what we like to learn about is our counseling department. So we're going to hear a report from Ms. Heather Rodriguez. I'm just going to move out.
Okay, you might want to move back. We are using the mobile projector today because the projector on the ceiling is faulty, and you already have noticed that the monitor over there is not working tonight either.
All right, so while that is brightening, hello everyone. My name is Heather Rodriguez. I'm Director of School Counseling for the district, so it's nice to see all of you again and meet some new faces.
Oh, it's the
We'll get the lighting figured out in a moment.
It's blocking it.
No, that is.
Oh, that's the color.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
colored. That is not coming through very well there. So I think this is the only slide with this block of color on it. We should be okay for the rest. I kind of need to see my notes.
Can we say?
Sorry, I don't have it completely memorized. All right, so welcome. This is just a report on, as you all know, the directors are K through 12 directors, so it is the counseling program from kindergarten through high school. In the report that the school committee members received, the audience doesn't all have a copy, but you know that the school counseling department is coordinated, it is comprehensive, it is developmental. So what that means, it is coordinated by staff, the community, and some other outside personnel when relevant. It is comprehensive. It serves the K through 12 age range with a full range of assessment services, including assessment, consultation, counseling, referral, placement, follow-up, and follow-through. And it is developmental in that we do appropriate activities for each grade level as the students progress from kindergarten through high school. There are 4 major components of the school counseling program. Those are responsive services, individual planning, system support and program development, and school counseling curriculum. So responsive services are just kind of what they sound like. We are responding to the individual and group needs of our students. And that is most often crisis management, intervention, parent conferences, consultation with other professionals, and referrals to outside agencies if students need some more support beyond what we can give them during the school day in order to access the curriculum. Individual planning is meeting with students on an individual basis and attending to their unique needs. Some students may need more than others in certain areas, academic, personal, emotional, so we tailor our counseling program to the needs of each student. The system support and program development is what do we do to maintain and develop our program. So we do research into current practices, best practices in our field. We reach out to the community and try and develop a relationship with all of the stakeholders in our program. And we participate on different community agencies and committees when things are being developed. We hold parent evenings. We are a part of the Parent Principal Counselor Coffee Program that speaks on different topics throughout the year during the Principal Coffee Hour. We have recently updated our school counseling website in the past 2 years, and that is now providing a lot more information, and it serves as one central location to do a lot of question answering for the community, so they have a central resource. And it's also professional development that each of our members does in order to come up to best practice standards in their field. All right. And then the school counseling curriculum obviously is the curriculum that we follow K through 12 to address the social and emotional needs of our students, and also bullying, anti-bullying and bullying prevention programming. So we have a philosophy in our department. We're aligned pretty much with the high school mission, which also extends down through kindergarten through the high school, where our mission is to help students maximize their academic, civic, personal, and social development. We believe students are respected and supported both as learners and as human beings. Obviously, the academics are why they are attending school, but they're kids also, and they're becoming citizens, and so we have to pay attention to their social, emotional, and just citizenship needs. And also, we have a curriculum so that we help all students acquire skills in academic, personal, social, and career areas, so that they can leave us and go out into the world and support themselves and be great citizens and great people. So our staff, who are we? What do we do? We are district-wide. We have one director, that's me. In our elementary schools, we now have one school adjustment counselor at the elementary level in each of the 4 buildings. We do not have school counselors also. Adjustment counselors are the only counseling staff at the elementary level. At the middle school level, we also have one full-time adjustment counselor, and there are 3 full-time school counselors as well. And then at the high school, there are 5 full-time counselors. I have a .2 caseload, so I do have a little bit of the A's and B's because we work alphabetically. One full-time school adjustment counselor, and in the past few years, we have added some program support at the high school as well. So although they aren't full professional staff, we have a transition room coordinator and a post-secondary planning coordinator. And I will tell you a little bit more about those programs in a little bit, but they serve to help support the counseling program and the counseling staff as well as the students. So what has changed since I last saw you in 2007? 5 out of 17 total staff members are new to the district, so we're pretty stable. 2 of those positions are completely new positions that we just added this year at the adjustment counselor in the elementary level. So starting at the high school, the transition coordinator was added in the fall of 2012. And following year, in 2013 in the fall, the post-secondary planning coordinator was added. In 6th grade, our new staff member is Nina Sperry. She is there to replace Sandy DiGiacomo, was a longtime school counselor. She was with the district in many different roles, and she retired this past January. So she is off doing more exciting traveling than she could do when she had our full-time job in the counseling department, and Nina has filled that role. And at the elementary level, we added one full-time adjustment counselor in each building, so we added 2 positions for the fall of this present school year, so we have those positions, and so we are now fully staffed with 1 adjustment counselor in each of the 4 elementary buildings. So that is reflected in the next bullet point as well. And the school adjustment counselor at the middle school had been brought down to 0.5 at one point, brought back up to 0.75, and as of this fall is back up to 1.0. So we are back at full strength. All right, so we start with the high school. In the report, I think I worked K through 12, and now we're kind of in the PowerPoint to mix it up. We're working 12 to K. So Hingham High School counselors, what do? We have responsive services. So individual, small group counseling, consultation with parents and outside agencies, academic and college counseling. So this is just a snapshot of college counseling is always a big topic. So what do we do in terms of college applications? That's just one tiny statistic in the window of what we do in that area. So 263 students submitted 2,222 applications. That's a number 8.5 applications per student on average. We have obviously more and less. 5.2 counselors, and so each counselor processed 444 college applications. 65 roughly percent of our students apply by the early action or early decision timelines in generally by December 1st. November 1st and 15th are the biggest deadlines. So all of that happens in a very short window of time right when we get back to school. We're pretty much wrapped up with the college application process right around December 1st for most students, because most students submit at least one early application. All right, so what else do we do? Individual planning. When looking at the high school, staffing at the high school level, as we have seen, there's 5.2 high school full-time counselors. We also have added the transition room coordinator, or transition program coordinator, and the post-secondary planning coordinator. So this makes the ratio of students to counselors a lot more manageable, because even though we haven't added full counselors, they're doing a lot of support work with the students. So it takes a lot of detail work and takes a little bit of the time that we wish we could spend with all of our students, and they take some of that added detail time for us. So despite the fact that they're not full counselors, they're taking a lot of that load. And I think in your reports, I had ratios of MASCA is the Massachusetts School Counseling Association. It's based off of the American School Counseling Association. Their recommended counselor to student ratio is 1 to 200. NEASC recommends 300 students to one counselor. We are, this year we're about 230. In the past couple of years, we've been down at 218, 217. So even though the recommendation is 200 for the Massachusetts School Counselors Association, realistically, that's very low, and we are very fortunate to be where we are with those numbers. Most, in reality, schools are closer to the 300 and higher. So I just wanted to point that out. System support and development, we do a lot of outreach to the community. We think we have a parent night geared towards at least every grade. A couple years ago, we had an advisory committee, and they suggested, we had junior parent night and sophomore parent night and freshman parent night, and they said, well, what if someone's kind of ready to think about college, not when they're a junior, but when they're a sophomore, or they want to start thinking about financial aid a little bit. So we opened up, and you see in the report, we changed the titles of some of our parent night programming to kind of opening it up to everybody. We've been inviting both students and parents to the programming, so that although we do everything with the students during school, that's just another added opportunity for them to come with their parents, so they're hearing the same thing at the same time, and try and get everybody on the same page, which doesn't always happen with teenagers. School and district-wide committee involvement, we've had K through 12 health committee and curriculum committees. We'll be trying to start another curriculum committee. I'm looking forward to next year, if possible, to look at the curriculum that we're using, because we are going to start the full day K, and we have some older curriculum that we want to keep updating, some new things coming online that is just best practice professionally, so we want to see if we can roll that out. Our staff is great about going to professional development. We've had one of our high school counselors wrote a grant to go out and visit college campuses, and so she's done a fair amount of traveling, as have a couple of other counselors, to go out and see colleges firsthand, to kind of, we can read all about them, and we might have been there 10 years ago, but seeing the updates that things have, campuses have done and schools have done to their campuses is really great, and I think that firsthand knowledge is really valuable. So that's one example of some professional development we've done. And then we have a seminar program at each grade level. In freshman and sophomore year, we are able to kind of co-opt a couple days of the health classes, and we go in there and we orient freshmen to the high school, continue training them on anti-bullying ideas, and then we kind of talk about, this is high school, this counts now, this is your transcript, this is what it looks like, how do you get yourself through high school with our help, and kind of get them kind of thinking, this is high school, this is what counts now. How am I gonna see myself outside of high school? Because 4 years seems like a long time when you're a freshman, but when you're a senior, it seems like you were there for 5 days instead of 4 years. Sophomore year, we talk about career planning with the students. We go a little more in depth. We do a career interest survey. We do a personality survey. So it allows them to kind of start to be introspective. Who am I? What kind of personality do I have? How will that impact the choice of career that I have, or a choice of major? And what kind of job will I be happy in? Will I be happy, sitting in a cube entering data, or do I need to be out giving presentations, interacting with people? What will make me happy and fulfilled? Junior and senior year, we focus more on the post-secondary planning. So junior year is if the student is going to college, we get them to explore what are their interests, what are their likes, what are their dislikes, so we can build a list with them, and they can go out and do a little bit of research, and then we kind of keep building the list and get them ready to apply the next year. If they're headed into the military, we get them to take the ASVAB test, which will prepare them for what military career they may be suited for. If they're going on to a job shadow program or a gap year or an apprenticeship year for employment, we make sure that they have a good resume, that they have interview skills, that they're prepared to present themselves in the workplace or some other program. And then senior year, we focus primarily in the fall on, most of our students are going on to either 2 or 4 year schools, so we focus on the actual application process at that time. And for students who are not going on to college, we're just still guiding them. Have you applied to jobs? Do you need more interviews? What can we do for the military? Working with recruiters and things like that. So moving down to the middle school. The middle school, grades 6, 7, and 8. It's a transitional school where they're growing up to go to the high school where everything starts to count, but they still can take some risks and learn who they are, and they have a little cushion behind them. So each of the grade levels functions a little bit differently. Counselors are assigned to a grade rather than alphabetically like they are at the high school. So one counselor has an entire grade. They follow that grade through their entire time in middle school, so they really get to know the kids. And the looping allows them to focus on the unique structure of that grade at that time. So 6th grade, kids working in teams versus the 8th grade kind of going all over. They don't have to spread themselves between all 3 models at once. They can really concentrate on one grade at a time. The one thing I do mention later is the classes are getting bigger, as we know, as enrollment. So for instance, this year the 6th grade counselor has 600, it's not 600, sorry, I just doubled the size of the class, 388 students to work with. So it's getting tough for them to kind of get to know all the kids individually and serve their needs, but they are doing a fantastic job. They too do responsive services such as individual and small group counseling, a lot of consultation with parents and teachers. At the high school level, we interface a lot with the kids because they're in charge of their own education for the most part, and that's what we're trying to guide them towards at our level at the high school. So we talk with them, and then if we need to make sure mom and dad are included, we include mom and dad. Whereas at the middle school, there's a lot more interface with parents in addition to the students, and kind of negotiating that growth in them for advocating for themselves and trying to become the owner of your education. So they're working that a little bit more than we do at the high school. They also work with outside agencies when students have mental health needs that they may need a little bit more support than what we can give them during the school day, to refer them out to that. And like I said, they're assisting with self-advocacy skills. And then they do the individual planning, so academic counseling, including course selection, coordinating applications to vocational and private secondary schools. You have a chart in your report of how many applications were submitted at each of the grade levels this year. They do a fair amount of administering standardized testing with this week with APs and next week with MCAS. I feel like all I'm doing lately is watching kids take tests, but such is the mandate of the state and others. And they also do special education and 504 advising and coordination. They also do a fair amount of system support and program development. They hold some parent evenings. They coordinate a lot of in-service trainings for staff. They have a lot of ongoing professional development. There each year is a bullying conference. The Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center at Bridgewater State University is always hosting updates about new research in the bullying and anti-bullying field, so they are constantly getting updates through that. They're members of different school and district committees, and they serve as mentors for new staff. They've had a fair amount of interns who, adults who are in graduate school who want to become school counselors, who are kids to me at this point in my career. They're interning with them, and so they're kind of showing them how to be professional school counselors. And they also have the school counseling curriculum. They do second step lessons. So second step is the curriculum that we use at the elementary level. It has a 6 through 8 component as well. So they're in the classroom quite a bit, getting to every single student. They have 15 lessons in grade 6 and then 8 lessons in grade 7 and 8. And in your reports, I break down how many individual lessons that means that they have to schedule. So they're in the classrooms quite a bit, which is helpful because they do get to meet every student in a classroom setting and get to know them on a daily basis, which is nice. All right, so moving down to the elementary school, these are our school adjustment counselors. I just have them all up there because I'm so excited to have them full, one in every school. As you can see, I have their licensure requirements right after their names because unlike many positions in a school, they have to have dual licensure. They not only have to be licensed by the state as a school adjustment counselor, they also have to hold either a LICSW, which is a licensed independent social worker, or an LMHC, which is a licensed mental health counselor. So when they look to do professional development, they have to maintain so many credit hours for both licenses. So we do have a program where we have a local therapist who does clinical supervision with them, which is best practice in the field, so that they can go over some difficult cases and get some professional clinical guidance. They also have the 4 components of the school counseling program: the responsive services, individual planning, system support and development, and the curriculum. Social thinking down under the curriculum is kind of newer. It's a program for students who social emotional cues and social interaction doesn't necessarily come naturally to them. So there is the social thinking curriculum that is based on developing those skills. A lot of students on the autism spectrum benefit from this, because there's definite skills that can be taught, but we're finding a lot of kids that are not on the spectrum also may intuitively do this but don't have a name for it. And so when you kind of name it and point out that it is kind of a thing and it can be learned, they not only can practice it better themselves but also be more aware of other students who it may not be second nature for and kind of understand that process. So I included charts about the school adjustment counselor ratios. So it's 1 per building, so that's not a surprise. That's the high school. The middle school is serving 1,022 students. East and Foster. Plymouth River and South. So what are the changes? What has changed since the last time I was here? The biggest thing and the best thing for me this year is the restoration of 1 school counselor in each building. They were spread pretty thin, and it moved from a direct intervention with students to a little more consultation with staff to kind of have staff be trained to manage their own classrooms or consult with the adjustment counselor. So now the adjustment counselors have a lot more time to be proactive. That is like, if there was one word that I would want to describe the counseling department, that is my best word, because we don't want to just react to things that are happening to us and to our kids. We want to be able to prevent things. I think ultimately you stave off a lot of what comes at us if you get to the kids early, teach them to be respectful, to be aware of themselves, to be aware of others, to be aware of others' feelings. They need the academic knowledge, but they also need to how to navigate as a person in the world. And that's a lot of what the elementary adjustment counselors help with. So having more time to do prevention programming and be proactive is phenomenal, and I think we will see benefits in the years to come. So in 4 more years, when I'm back up before you, we'll have even better things to report. Elementary, so restoration of adjustment counselors, middle school adjustment counselor, high school, the best things that have happened in the past couple of years is the implementation of the transition room program and the implementation of the post-secondary planning office. Without adding 15 new school counselors, that's the best thing that we can do. It really is taking some things that we were doing anyway, we weren't reinventing the wheel every single time a student came back from being out for the transition room program, for instance, for a long time, but we were communicating a lot and kind of redoubling our efforts. And now with one person to coordinate that, it's been much smoother, and it takes all that little nitty-gritty time away from the counselors, so we can just focus on what's the problem and how can we help it get better. Same thing with a post-secondary planning office. I will make a college list with my kids and I'll say, okay, here's a list of 20 schools. I know it can be overwhelming. We can break it down, but why don't you go off and do some research, and then we can work together to narrow it down after I know what your likes and your dislikes are once you've done a little bit of research. So, but I don't have time to sit for 3 hours in my office with one student to have them click the name of every single college that they're interested in and start doing research. So that's where the post-secondary planning office comes in. She can do that. So right now, Kara Kelly is our staff person in there, and it's fabulous because I can say, here, come do some research. I know you got to a little bit last night, but you had a lot of homework, so now you have a study period. You can do a little bit more targeted research. She's helping with common application completion, interview skills. She's held workshops for navigating Naviance for parents and students. How do you do that? How does the common application work for parents and students? So she really is reaching out to not only the students but the parents, which is good because it's always nice to know, yes, the student is driving the process, they're the ones applying to college, but you kind of need to know what's going on too so that you can stay on top of them. So those have been 2 really great programs that have been implemented. Elementary school, so our recommendations from the future, going K to 12. So like I mentioned, we just need to take a look at our curriculum. It's fairly old at this point. We want to do some updating, and we will be able to do that in the near future. So we're going to look exactly at the targeted things. What do we need, and update them. Second step went through grade 3, grades 4 and 5 was called Steps to Respect, which was a bullying prevention program. They have now taken the Steps to Respect away, and it's now called Second Step Bullying Prevention. So we have one test kit at South School. That's the new curriculum, and that's been going great. It's great updated information. We're looking at adding some social thinking materials. At the middle school, this is all in an ideal world. I'm not saying please give me everything I'm asking for, but in an ideal world, I would love more counseling staff at the middle school. Just the enrollment, it's hard to keep up with the number of kids, and I think sometimes some people say, well, it doesn't count yet there. The high school's where it counts, everything's on your transcript, but you're setting the stage there. So kids who are developing or maintaining habits that aren't serving them to be successful independently in high school, if we can get at them in the middle school where they do develop those habits, then that will carry through to high school. We're seeing a lot of kids going out for hospitalizations at the middle school level. That's not just an issue that we have at the high school level, it's down at that area too. So at some point, implementing some sort of transition room program might not be a bad idea, just to kind of help those kids ease back into school as well. And again, if you set them up at that age to successfully transition back into the high school, hopefully they won't, or back into the middle school, hopefully they won't need that again at the high school because they're working on things, but just in the case that they would, they kind of have done it once and they have a successful model, and it's not as scary, and they can integrate a lot more quickly. High school, my vision for the transition program in an ideal world would to have the coordinator have a totally dedicated tutor in there to help kids with content tutoring, because right now we're just doing coordination and facilitation of making up work. I'd love also to have a dedicated adjustment counselor, because many of the kids in that program have mental health needs. That's why they were out of school. So to help support, them getting through the day emotionally would be phenomenal. And also expand the post-secondary planning position. Right now, we are incredibly fortunate we've had 3 since we instituted the center. And the first 2 have been school counselors have a master's degree. So we're unlike teachers where we have to come into the job with a master's degree. So we have been fortunate to have a fully licensed school counselor agree to work at the tutor rate for, to be the post-secondary planning coordinator for, we've had full-time hours, which is phenomenal. But obviously those people are looking to be actually full-time professional counselors. So the first 2 we have lost to that position. The person we have now is phenomenal. She's in the same position, so I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know anything. I'm not breaking any news right now, but I wouldn't be shocked if eventually, if a school counseling job opens up, she might move on to that. So I would love to have the post-secondary planning position, become a full professional position. But like I said, that's in an ideal world. Every school district has a million different needs in a million different areas, and I can selfishly say that's what I want for my department, but I'm in the enviable position of being able to make the harder decisions put off on someone else. I don't have to create the whole entire school budget. So there's a lot of information in your report that was not in the presentation, but I don't want to take your entire night and be disrespectful of your time. So are there any questions that you all want to follow up with?
Do you have any questions?
Oh, I had
Here.
one question. In the middle school chart on the caseload,
Which page are you on?
page 15.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
And you had mentioned that you're getting high on the caseload. And it said here that the MSCA recommendation was 200.
Yeah.
Is the NEASC
The same.
300? So we're exceeding
So we're exceeding
the NEASC.
one, but not, right, yep.
Okay. So it's the same caseload for middle school and high school. Okay.
Yes, used to have separate commissions for elementary, middle, and high school. Now they have one public school commission, and so they didn't change from the high school number. So that isn't
Okay.
a specific number for middle school, it's just
It's
the
the
number
general.
they
Yeah,
use.
because you had mentioned it for the high school, so
Yeah.
I was curious for the middle school.
But typically, when we would be thinking of adding in any of those positions, we'd also look at things like our benchmark communities and
Oh,
see where they
absolutely.
are.
Yeah.
That would be another metric
Yeah.
we could use.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to comment that I saw that the survey for the seniors came out of where they're going to go to college, and
Yes.
I think I remembered that was something we had talked about when you did the college report. So thank you for doing that, and I think I hope it helps you get
Yes,
better
it
information.
absolutely, yep.
So that was great, and more progress as we learn more about the post-secondary planning office. It seems to get better and better every year, which I know I greatly appreciate, and I think others do too. So thank you.
Thank you.
And just to
kind
clarify, when Heather talks about a full professional position, what she means is that they would be a member of the HEA and get a contract that's on that salary scale, whereas in both cases, the roles in those functions started out being at para rates and have moved to tutor rates.
Yeah.
But as Heather said, it's still hard to maintain people who've gone to school, gotten licensed, and now
Yeah.
want to have their own caseload.
And just to expand on what you had just mentioned, the survey is, so when we do that, 2,222 college applications, and then the seniors are like, thanks, and they're done with us a lot of times. And we're like, okay, we need to know what happened now with those applications. So we don't get notified from colleges, all colleges, some colleges do send us a list, thankfully, but not all colleges do. So some kids who aren't as quick at coming down to tell us where they're going or where they got in or where they didn't get in, it's hard to get that data. And we have tried a million different ways. We go into their English classes, we have them fill out a piece of paper. Last year we did the online survey, we did that again. We had a lot of success last year. So that's how we get a lot of our admissions data. It just went out last week because May 1st is the universal reply date that students have to tell colleges where they're going. So a lot of them are making last minute decisions. A lot of them are still on wait lists right now and may get in places over the summer, so that even may change. But we've asked them to report back to us. Where did you get in? Where did you not get in? I always want to throw out there, I'm like, if you don't tell me, I'm assuming you got rejected, so please let me know that you got in somewhere. And that usually gets them to come down real quick because they want their proper decision logged in Naviance. What else?
Does anybody else have any questions? Anything from the audience?
Great.
The one thing I would say is, I didn't see it in here, but you have that wonderful website with all that information.
Yes.
Do you want to give a shout out to it?
I
Because
would
you
love to
mentioned.
give a shout out. I could have sworn I put it in here
I
somewhere.
might have
but
missed
I
it.
don't know exactly
Somewhere.
what page it is, but it is hinghamhighschoolcounseling.weebly.com. So with the help of the advisory committee, we had some parents kind of helping give feedback. They went out to their cohorts and said, what's the most valuable information? We looked at a bunch of different other high school websites and we kind of came together, and it's easy. Weebly is very user-friendly. I don't have to be a webmaster and be trained in doing that. I can be a school counselor and also post to a website, which was not true with our old website. So it's
Heather,
definitely
is it linked to our website, though?
it
Can you
is
get
linked.
to it through
Yep,
ours
you can
as
link
well?
through it through the high school website. There's a counseling top tab, and the website comes right off of that. Or
But you might want to tell people some of the good information you have on there since you're giving your report.
yes, let's see.
Just since it's
This is
extensive about
just-
the AP scores and the
Yes.
colleges and
So
stuff
we
like that.
have. Let's see if we can.
I'm not, well, it popped
If-
up, right? Because
yeah.
this room, sometimes you have to go through the Aruba or the town internet. Quick.
Oh geez, typing skills.
While Heather's doing that, she talked about the social learning curriculum, which is the, under the umbrella of the adjustment counselor workload. And segment 1, 2, 3, 4, I think it's because we don't have
Yeah,
internet.
it's on my computer,
That's okay.
but it's not projecting to the screen.
That's fine.
So to continue with that, the segment 4 of the superintendent spotlight this year, which is the, well, not the most recent one now because we've done a more recent one, but anyway, that's devoted to the social learning curriculum, and I interview Heather, Jessica Hogue, who is a new adjustment counselor, and Catherine Ryan, who's from East, who's our most experienced counselor, and the whole thing is on the social learning curriculum. So if anyone wants to find that, you can locate those by going on HCAM, Superintendent Spotlight, and all of the segments. There are now 5 of them. Tomorrow there'll be 6. They are there as YouTubes, and you can review them. But I thought that one was very good.
Yes, that was
My
enjoyable.
guests were
to have
very
a
articulate
fun
about that
conversation.
curriculum, so thank you for that.
So thank you for doing that. Just to follow up, on the counseling website, there is our mission. This program review will be posted tomorrow. We have the school profile, which is what we send with every school college application. That's kind of a profile of our community in our school. What's our average SAT score? How many APs do we offer? Our average AP scores, all sorts of things like that. The college entrance examination board report that I do every December, that reports on SAT scores, ACT scores, AP scores, subject test scores. That is all available. We have the counseling handbook is up there. We have our post-secondary planning coordinator recently did a college process handbook that we're getting up there soon. We're kind of in the end revision process on that. There's a tab for each grade. So if you're curious, what do I do if I'm a parent of a freshman? What do I do if I'm a parent of a junior? There are checklists, frequently asked questions. There's a resources side tab, so that has every single parent coffee PowerPoint presentation that I've done. It has parent evening program presentations if we have them. So there's just a wealth of information on the website. Also for you to know, we don't have color printers at the high school in my department. They're in the graphics room, and with APs, I didn't get coordinated enough to bring them, but we have a phenomenal transition room full color brochure to tell everyone what the transition room program is. And one of the projects that the elementary adjustment counselors worked on all year is getting together a brochure on elementary adjustment counseling services throughout the district. So that is going to go live, and I'm going to go to get those printed soon. So we'll have that available for staff, parents, and associated community members as well. So I think we're making a lot of progress doing some community outreach and getting the word out about what we do in our department.
It's great.
Right.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much.
Let you power down there.
I am powering down, but I lost my mouse. All right, so I'll.
So our next item is 7.3, to appoint the district representative to the South Shore Educational Collaborative Board for 2015-2016. Dr. Gallo, would you like to serve us in that capacity again?
Yes, I would like to serve in that capacity. Again, this is a fairly new requirement. A number of years ago, there were a lot of new guidelines that came out of some unfortunate collaborative work, not in our collaborative, but there wasn't a whole audit that went on and some brand-new guidelines, and one of them is that they have to receive a record of a vote by the school committee as to who the board rep will be. And so that has to be in by next week, I think, actually. So this was the closest meeting toward to that date.
Good. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Dr. Dorothy Gallo, Superintendent of Hingham Schools, as the representative to the South Shore Educational Collaboratives Board for the 2015-2016 school year.
Do you have a second?
Second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? None against?
Thank you.
Congratulations, Dr. Gallo. Yeah.
Do we have any kids this year that are graduating?
We do. We have 2 students who are graduating, and the graduation, last year Liz and I went, and it's an enjoyable, a little different from our graduation, smaller number of students, and much more personal.
Last year, and that was,
So the
When is
date
this year?
of it is on June 3rd, which is a Wednesday at 2 in the afternoon.
yeah.
And certainly anyone is welcome to attend, but we do have 2 Hingham graduates as part of that. Thanks for asking that, Ed.
It was a very nice ceremony if people would have that time. It's great for the kids.
Oh,
I'm just setting up what.
okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha, all right. All right, moving along, 7.4. To hear an update on the plans for a working group meeting with the high school field neighbors scheduled for this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Carol, would you like to provide an update?
We're having a meeting on Thursday night at 7:30. We've identified several people who will sit down at the table with us to work on some language changes and discussion. And it's also, we've invited via email over 35 abutters to attend the meeting. There was a concern, despite the fact there have been several open meetings, that some people, especially at the planning board, were cut off and maybe didn't have a chance to speak so they could share their feelings with us. And Vicki Dolan was very helpful, and I sent her the email, and she forwarded it, made sure that everybody in the Meadows received it. So I think we have very good coverage in terms of people knowing about this session.
Good.
Carol, I would mention that I took a copy over to the planning board, and as a result of that, Mary Savage Dunham did send the notice of the meeting with the agenda to all the planning board members themselves, so that they would know that we had the
I
meeting.
mean, this was what they asked us to come back with some consensus on the modification. So that's the purpose of the meeting. And having spoken to a number of people, I'm very optimistic that we will reach that consensus on Thursday night.
Anybody have any questions, comments?
Is that meeting scheduled for this room?
This room.
Is there an overflow possibility?
Don't know.
We'll discuss.
I don't
and
know.
we'll get back to you on that. We'll make I'll talk to Dr. Gallo, and if we feel that way, then we'll make the necessary arrangements.
You know, the other thing that we can do, Ed, since it's going to be a working group, it's fairly small, we can set up the room so that there's a a rectangular kind of table, leaving more room to set up chairs. And you'll note about the room, there are many more chairs than there are, so we'll keep aware of that.
Cynthia?
I'd like to say that just from a personal point of view, I think that it's possible that maybe we should consider following the guidelines that are used by hearings and putting out a formal notice to all of the abutters of the high school, just so that we don't miss anyone, essentially. And I appreciate all the efforts that Carol and Dr. Gallo had made to notify as many as they can, but, you know, doing it the same way that the planning board has done and will continue to do so would seem to be a safer way to make sure that everyone knows about this.
Excellent suggestion. Any other questions or comments? Let's go to 7.5, to hear an update on the status of the 2015-16 operating budget and to consider action on a recommendation by the administration.
Thank you. So, I think the whole PowerPoint will tell you all we need to know without my giving any. Not sure what the problem is. Okay. So this is a history, if you will, of the budget votes mainly and the processes that we used. So the base budget, which is the budget for the year that we're in, $43,490,722. The school committee originally took a vote back in March, at the very beginning of March. It had been originally scheduled for late in February, and we postponed it. And the vote at that time was for $45,858,702, and that would have been a change from the FY15 budget of an addition of $2,367,980, and that was a budget that was a 5.44% increase overall. When we do the budget process, we typically separate the budget into three parts: the regular ed budget, and the special education budget, and the vocational education budget, very small amount, because the individual budgets, the three of them, can vary significantly from one year to the other in terms of percent of increase. And so we separate them out for that function, but when we vote, it's a vote for the overall operating budget, not separated. So at that point, the education subcommittee, who had been attending, the members had been attending the various budget sessions that we had, they came up with their own recommendation, which they then recommended to the full advisory committee, and that was for $45,413,720. The advisory committee accepted that recommendation and ultimately on March 9th voted on that. The selectmen met, and they also take a vote on our budget. They voted the same number that the advisory committee subcommittee had recommended to the full advisory committee, and that vote took place on the 5th. The advisory committee full vote then was on the 9th at the same figure, $45,413,720, and that produced a gap at that point of $444,982 between the initial vote that the school committee took and the votes of the advisory committee and the selectmen. So we were faced then with, the school committee was faced with the challenge of what do we do about that? And they stayed at that figure for a time, but ultimately revoted the budget on April 6th, and there's more information in here about that. And voted the same number as the advisory committee and the selectmen had voted, and therefore we could go to the town meeting with all three of the boards with the same number. The actual recommendation that town meeting acts on is the advisory committee vote, but here all three numbers were in the same place, and then you all know that we had the town meeting on April 27th, and that same number was voted, and it represented a 4.42% increase, and it represented an increase in dollars over the current year's budget by $1,922,998. So that's kind of the history. A different way of thinking about that is thinking about it in terms of a gap and how we had been working to close the gap. So you can see the school committee vote, what it was, and then the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee vote. And the budget gap then, between the two of those, if you subtract them out, you can see it's $444,982. At the April 6th meeting, which was 2 meetings ago, we've had the meeting of the 27th in between, but the first April meeting, we proposed some additional reductions to the school committee that would reduce the budget. And that those recommendations would reduce the budget by $294,487. So that meant that we were closer and that the gap was smaller. And in fact, the gap was smaller in the amount of $150,495. The school committee on the 6th, as part of the meeting, revoted its budget to the AdCom and the selectmen number, and that still left us with the gap of $150,495, with the assumption that we would make the $294,487 in reductions that we had proposed on that night. So we're at $154,95 as we enter this evening's figures. On April 6th, we suggested some additional things that we could consider, knowing that we still had a gap of $150,000. So these were the things that we said on April 6th that we would look at. Savings from some remaining unknowns. We, at that point, still had a little unknown in terms of information that would be coming about some changes, either long-term leaves, full year leaves of absence, or an additional possibility for retirement, that kind of thing. Information we just didn't have, but we expected to have in a short time. We also said that John was in the process of looking at fuel assumptions and any adjusting savings we could do, we could attain by going out to bid. And, you know, that process is not one where we bid once a year for gas and once a year for oil, heating oil, but rather that we keep track of what the market is and that we bid more than once and often would bid on the same product, whether it be oil or gas, multiple times during a year. So we said we would do that. We also said at that point that it was likely, given what we knew then about the number of children that were selecting a half-day program, that we could have even further savings than we had already taken in the midday transportation. We had $35,000 sitting in that budget at that time. We weren't sure about the enrollment in terms of half-day, but clearly, if there are only 4 children, or even if there are 10 children, we don't need $35,000 to transport them home one way during that, for that program. So we knew we could reduce that. We always have, or always had, I might be speaking incorrectly to say we always have, because the year isn't over yet, but in the last few years especially, we've had some last-minute personnel or changes or tuition changes in the case of special education, and that has allowed us to fund some of the things that we might otherwise have to cut that really are still important to us. At that time, the governor had proposed as part of his budget that he would allow only level tuition for special education schools. Everyone thought at the time that might not be within his realm of authority. While he might recommend it, it might not be in that realm. But also, subsequent to that, there was such an outcry from a very heavy lobby at the State House for special education matters, as you might assume there would be, that likely that would be overturned, so to speak. And so, in fact, in the Ways and Means budget, there was not a willingness to allow the flat tuition. We had in our budget tuition increases for special education schools at 2.5% at that point. And so, you know, we had thought maybe there'd be some additional savings there as time wore on. It doesn't seem to us at this point that that's a good direction to go in. It's not certain that the state budget is even going to be fully voted, hopefully by July 1, but it isn't there yet. And so we thought, thinking now, that that's really not a good place to look for savings. There's no guarantee that there would be any. But the maximum savings there, we reduced everything from 2.5%, which is what is in there now for our increases. If we reduced it to nothing, to flat, that would be as much as $48,000. Clearly, it's not going to be flat, and we're reluctant to risk taking any further money from there. And kind of as a last resort, and based largely on comments from the school committee, that a last resort would be that we would have to look at the 2.65 FTEs that are in there for high school staffing, and that they are under a new addition for staffing. We hadn't yet met, however, with the high school department directors and the middle school and high school principals, and that meeting happened with Ellen and me last Friday, so we have a better handle on what the needs are. But at that time, we said we don't have many other places that we can go realistically, and that we thought reducing the gap of $154.95 was likely going to be some combination of the kinds of things that we suggested at that time. So, So moving forward, the reductions that we've made over the process of the budget, and can we shut that off? I think these next few slides are going to be harder to see. And Ellen, would you pass out the
They're here. These?
Yes, those to school committee members, and then there may be a few extras that we can share. So over the course of the budget reductions, you can see here the changes column. If you look way to the right, those are the dates at which we made the different reductions from our original budget proposal. And so those were all past history. You've seen those before. They've been in the prior PowerPoints from March 30th and from April 6th. So now we're adding some things to that list, and you can get a sense of how closely those things that we're adding, those additional reductions to get to the 150, mirror what we said we would consider on April 6th. So on this page in your packet, which I don't have the page number here to tell you.
So, the second last page.
No, what's the page number? Okay. Okay, so it's on the next to the last page. The third page of the reductions. So everybody able to find that? Okay, so the reductions that we would propose at this point to get to a 0 for the gap are that we did have one additional retirement. It's a retirement of a nurse who is really a part of a nursing team at one of our schools. And so she is retiring, and her partner nurse, who's been working the other part of the time, 1 6/10, 1 4/10, would take over the load. And so there is some savings there. You can see in the column that says change, we would have a savings of 48,443, but then we'd have to increase the time of the partner, and their salaries are not that far apart. So there's a net savings there of about $6,000. John, in fact, did conduct his study and actually got quotes and went.
No, we've got contracts for.
We have
diesel
contracts,
fuel.
all right, signed contracts for fuel, and there's a savings of the fuel contract for 10,854, the heating oil at savings of 12,185. So that's certainly something that we listed, both of those things, that we thought we might have another retirement, and that we would look at any fuel savings that we could take out of the budget and still be prudent about it. We looked at the amount of money we had in there for the part-time kindergarten, and in fact, we think that we can reduce that from the 36,660 that was in the budget to 7,160. Remember, we're taking children only one way. Right now, children go home, and then the afternoon children have to be picked up, so it's 2 trips. And given the number of children, we don't need, I think there were 7 buses before that did that. We don't need 7 buses, so fairly modest amount there. Let me come back to the FTE thing in a minute. We've looked to the revolving account to take some additional money from the revolving account, and those are the accounts that are a function of our leasing and renting of space, if you will, fields, that we can take some additional money. We now are at the end of the year, so we know how much is in those accounts, which is always crucial. It's always challenging to reduce revolving accounts in the middle of the year when we don't yet know all the dollars that will be in them, so we feel comfortable we can do that for 30,617. And equally with respect to the revolving account for athletics, we now are into all the enrollments for the third season, the spring season. So all the dollars that are new in that account have been added, and in fact, we had an increase in user fees this year for athletics, which we anticipated we might have because more high school students. The class is bigger this year, freshman class, and next year it will be another big year. So we felt comfortably that we could take 16,980 out of that. So that really left us with still a gap of $44,418. Now, Ellen and I met last Friday with Derek Smith, middle school principal, and with Paula, high school principal, and then we met individually with each one of the department directors and each one of the resource teachers. And in fact, they had planned their staffing around the assumption, which I asked them to do, the assumption that we would have the 2.8 new middle school FTEs, full-time equivalents, and that we would have the 2.65, which is already one less full-time FTE than we had started with, that we would have those dollars. And so we looked at what reductions we could make and what kinds of permutations that we could come up with to reduce pieces of people to make this budget work. Our feeling is that none of the options that we came up with for possible reductions, even though we did identify some, were good ones. First of all, we couldn't do it entirely with the high school dollars, and I know the school committee had felt very strongly about the middle school dollars because of the increased size. Secondly, it was very challenging because we have a number of departments that share staff. So, for example, social studies and foreign language are linked because we have one teacher who teaches teaches Chinese in the foreign language department and teaches social studies in the other departments. We have another department where we have a teacher from the business department teaching in the social studies department and a business teacher teaching our computer applications course. So there, and at the middle school we have a teacher who teaches this year part science and part math, and next year the proposal would be for her to teach all science, and therefore we'd have to replace her in math. So it's not easy to simply say, well, if we reduce, this exactly is the course that we would reduce. So this is exactly the number of sections. So we have a list of possible options to reduce from that number. The number that we need to get to close the gap is 44,418, and that is about 7/10 of an FTE. That's what that would represent, 7/10 of an FTE. And some of it would need to be from the middle school, and some would need to be from the high school to get to that. So it's not a strong recommendation that I would say, well, we'll close the gap because we can easily take 418 out of the staffing budget at the secondary. We can't do it easily. The implications are not positive implications. Nevertheless, that's where we would have to go to come in at a 0. Unless you're willing to listen to a recommendation that we would make to you. And so this is the recommendation that we would make. That you accept the proposed reductions from the prior slide, and that has a reduction in the secondary staffing of the $44,000. But that you also agree that any further personnel savings that may occur as we move forward, and I'm sure there will be some. There might be little bits of savings, a few FTEs here or there. And we use that money to restore that 44,418. That is what we need to fully fund the 2.65 FTEs at the high school and the 2.8 at the middle school that were in the school committee recommended budget, the earlier budget. And that's why I say that we're part of the original school committee vote. And then you request of us that we inform you of any specific changes that occur that are of that nature in personnel accounts, which would have to mean something like another retirement or something like some additional long-term leaves, meaning a full year leave of absence. We actually have had 5 or 6 more changes that have occurred over the last month or so. The problem is they are mainly in the area of a 1-year leave for a person taking a maternity leave, where because those folks are younger, the replacement for some of those roles wouldn't be much of a savings. You know, $3,000 in one case and $2,000 in another, so we didn't even put those things on the list because there is not a significant savings there. So that's the recommendation, that you accept what we've put here as a way of closing the gap, because we do need to close the gap, but that you understand it's a very reluctant reduction of 44,418 in what personnel that we now know, not just that we estimated from discussions in November, and not just what we put in the budget there, but that we now know, having looked at all of the tallies, the courses the kids want to take, the class sizes and so on, and that we would really like to fund fully to that point. So you might ask, well, what will happen if there aren't any more changes? If there aren't any more changes, then we need to look at that 44 reduction. And the 44 reduction is actually about, you know, half of it what it was on Friday, so we made a little progress there anyway. But that you give us the opportunity to apply those savings, if they occur, to put back those FTE numbers. So, Ellen.
Yep.
So that's the update. Oh. And you know, I guess that I don't want to say this is good news, but you know, in the past couple of years, we've had a lot of changes after fact, to the point where that left us with additional dollars that weren't needed in the proposed budget at the end of the year, and left us with some dollars that actually could be returned to the town. So that happened. And as well, it perhaps created an impression among folks that pay attention to budgets, particularly on the town side, that, oh, they can always just fund everything they need because there will always be those unanticipated personnel changes. And I'm letting you know that, you know, well, here's a year where the budget is much tighter, and we think we've kind of exhausted the typical places that we would look for budget savings, but that we don't want to give up on the fact that there might be some things that come along before the end of school in particular. We certainly have to make a decision on what things we're going to reduce, because if it's a smaller number of FTEs for a particular subject, then that could mean mean larger class sizes, and we've got a list of all the kinds of things. As I say, it'd be nice to tell you, it will mean this. You can't do that because there are so many options and they involve departments, but that's the recommendation.
Any questions, comments?
Well, I'm sure I appreciate all the detail and the continued minute paying attention to it. I think your recommendation is the best we can do at this point, and hoping that the
Obviously,
small
we've
changes
committed to the budget.
will
You
come.
voted a
Yeah.
budget. We've committed to making it work, and we will. We're just saying, let's not close the door at
Yeah.
this point, other than that we have to live within the budget town vote, of course.
Thanks, Dot. I appreciate your work on that. I would agree with your proposal that we should just leave the door open and hope we limp to that figure.
Would it be beneficial to wait to the June 1st meeting to vote on this?
Well,
Where we're going to get more, or is it just,
No,
we're at this point where?
I would appreciate a vote now, and the reason for that is that if we found some reductions in the next week or so, then we need to move forward with the whole scheduling process. And that takes a lot of work on the part of the principals. So while perhaps nothing will happen by June 1st, it would be good that if it does, you're in agreement with the use of any savings like that to fund the 44. So that's the only reason for looking for a vote now as opposed to waiting until June 1st. Certainly we'll bring you up to date on June 1st again anyway. But.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, help me, Ellen, if I get this right, to accept the budget recommendation for reducing to the voted budget of town meeting, provided that if we find further savings, we would restore the portions of the FTEs at the secondary level.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Right?
Could you just make the motion reflect that we're not reducing the number we previously voted? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
As amended. Any other discussion, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
7.6, to award a bid for 1 year with 2 one-year renewal options for athletic transportation.
Yeah, we went out to, the athletic transportation for, most of our transportation is about, for athletics, there's about 65% of our transportation is outsourced. And we do about 35%. You know, and that could fluctuate between 60 and 40 or 35 and 65. And the reason we don't do all of our transportation is because our buses are engaged in activity, you know, taking the elementary school home and the high school home and the private school runs, while students may have to immediately leave to get to their location to play games. So we do have to have a contractor doing outsourcing, doing our transportation. So we went out to bid, and we opened the bids on April 30th. Prior to that, we were under contracts that actually expired in 2013. So 2014, 2015, First Student was still providing the service for us, but under the older rates. So when we opened the bid, four bidders asked for the plan, and unfortunately, we only received one bid. And that one bid was from our existing provider, which was First Student. So, you know, when you open the package, the bid prices came in up significantly higher than our budget for fiscal 16. We had in our budget for 16, $68,000. And the bid, now this bid isn't an actual number that you'd pay. The bid would be a price that the amounts we'd pay if we used all of the services that were sort of set up in the bid, such as we said, you know, it's gonna be about 11,200 miles, and you're gonna have about 320 hours of wait time. That bid came in at $79,475, so that's $11,000 greater than what we had in our budget, or a 16.59% increase over what we have.
If we did,
If we did all the
Oh,
services, if we did all the services. Now, I mean, if you look back, when I look back to the previous contract, bid out in a similar way, similar miles, we don't always use the services that we sort of put down in the bid, because even the prior bids were higher, like 13's bid was $64,000, but we didn't really spend the $64,000. So the likelihood is that our transportation cost for 16 will come in somewhere probably between $68,000 and $79,000, with $11,000 fluctuation. The prices came in higher, and I did call the other bidders. Yeah, I wanted to understand, you know, why didn't you bid? And the bid was structured a little bit differently this year than it had been in the past. In the past, it was sort of like, we go to these towns, how much for a town? And that puts a lot of risk onto the vendor, whereby they don't know how long they're gonna have to sit and wait. They don't know, you know, they get an idea, they can figure out what the miles are and stuff, but, you know, what are you gonna do? You're gonna figure out 2 hours, 3 hours? How many hours wait time will you be figuring for each one of the events? So this time, we structured very similar to the way other communities structure, which would be how much per mile and how much per hour of wait time, okay? And you give them the locations that you go to and say, you know, Duxbury's, okay, 42 miles round trip. How much per mile and how much for, you know, an hour of wait time? Whereby a baseball game might be 2 hours, 2.5 hours, or 2 hour wait time. You know, a soccer game might be an hour and a half wait time. So the bid was slightly structured, it was different, it was structured differently than it was previously as well. But similar to the way all other communities structure the bids. Also, we put into it a fuel rider, whereby if fuel prices decline, we get credits, and if fuel prices go up, we would pay additional monies. And we set a bar for the fuel price for diesel fuel of like $3.25, which is a pretty fair price. So, you know, and that's if it fluctuates within 5 cents. So there could be credits coming to us, or it could go up a little bit higher if, you know, all of a sudden diesel fuel spikes to $5. You don't want to kill your contractor anyways. I mean, it would only be fair to sort of do that. And this is a 1-year contract with 2 one-year renewals, so that, you know, if all of a sudden prices look like they're getting out of control, or this bid came in higher, you know, we could always opt to like try to go out to bid next year. So back to the story, why didn't other people bid? So I called the vendors up. One had a proximity issue. They're based in Foxborough, so they didn't want to do it. Others were significantly fearful of, you know, competition with First Student. Just you know, maybe fearing a little retaliation if they were to turn around and try to lowball the bid. However, looking at the previous bid, that bidder did bid last time, and they were significantly higher than First Student anyway. So I'm not sure, I don't think that there's any value going out to bid, because I don't think we'd get additional bidders. Now, the second year, in 17, the contract would increase by 4.54%, and the third year, the contract would increase by 4.35%. Those numbers go, so basically, we're looking at 79,475, in 17, it would be 83,087, and in fiscal 18, it would be 86,700. And keep in mind that we don't know what the actual number will be, because it will be based on the actual usage. You know, and you kind of look, the last time the increases were 3%, but the two big significant things that have happened over the past couple of years really is, well, there's Obamacare, and then there's the absence policy, you know, where you gotta give the 5 days absence, and then you got that big hike in minimum wage. All those significantly impact bus drivers, because their levels and the amount of hours that they work because they're not all 40-hour weeks. So, you know, you get 20 hours, and now all of a sudden you're looking at 40 hours at $12 or $13 versus 20 hours at $20, you know, with benefits or without benefits. So there's that's the way he had my contact there, who unfortunately passed away 2 days after I spoke to him.
Oh, jeez.
It had explained, you know, how the personnel issues that are floating out there would impact sort of pricing. So the long and short is, I don't think that we would get better pricing, and what I'm recommending is that we award this bid to First Student for athletic transportation. I don't think we should put an amount up to, because we don't know exactly how much it will be, but if we were to significantly go over the budget, we could use the athletic revolving to subsidize any amount that we would overexpend. And, you know, if it's going crazy, then we'll be sure to rebid it for next year to, you know, try to get even more aggressive, or see if we can get somebody else to bid it.
But we would have a number to put in the budget
We
as
have a
a
number.
starting
Yeah.
point, because we would have this year.
Right.
John, would any vendor be interested in doing, I'm gonna say one way, in other words, no wait, they take the kids, then they leave, and then we use our people to pick the kids up? Would that be helpful?
It's not a bad idea, Ed. I mean, I had never thought about that. Although, you know, see, when they look at their time too, right? So basically, they're looking at a wait time of $55 an hour. $55 an hour, going to 57, going to 60. That's the way it's progressing. Now, they're leaving from Pembroke. They're not like our drivers, okay, hey, we're just leaving for Hingham. They gotta come to us, then they gotta get there. So I'm not sure that they'd be willing to like go for like the 2 hours or something, you know?
Wouldn't you end up though double using gas if you have the vendor driving?
Right.
And then we send our Hingham driver to, say, to Pembroke to pick up. You've got on two sides, you're using twice as much gas than if you are sitting there waiting. I mean, I have to think at
Yeah.
some point for either us or them, that expense of the gas is gonna get
Yeah, the
factored.
second trip
it
is
would
gonna
work good if
cost
they
no
were
matter
just
who
going
does
off
it.
to, you know, and if they were going right to home.
But I guess you
Yeah.
look at that, you know, the wait time versus what that cost is.
Yeah, the per mileage charge I thought was pretty high. Per mile was $5.50 an hour. You know, now, municipalities that contract their buses and contract with First Student, say, or some other company for, the same company for their athletic transportation, they probably pay somewhere between, and I checked this with my peers, they're paying like $3.50 to $4 per mile. And the reason for that is because when they do the contract, it's embedded into their contract. And let's just say if you're contracting for 10 buses, they're really pricing their contract out, not on 10 buses, but on 13 buses, because they need those other buses to do the athletic runs, similar to us. But they'll spread it over the 10 buses. So basically, some of their regular transportation is subsidizing their athletic transportation. Because I got the numbers, I had done this in Norwell, but we used First Student as well in Norwell. And I did see prices in the 350s, so, you know, $3.50 to $4 per mile. And when ours came back at 550, I said, ooh, this is crazy, what is this? So I made a call to understand it, and I did get a certain level of comfort in understanding it. Do I like it? No, but I can't see a scenario where we'd do better if we went out to bid, so.
Do we have any other questions? Does anyone want to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the athletic transportation award for a 1-year contract with 2 1-year renewals. Or anything else?
I moved that to First Student, to award it to
First
First
Student.
Student. Yeah,
Based on their contracted amount, rates?
yeah, based on rates established in their bid, yeah.
Okay. So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank
John, I
you.
think that's what Dr. Ed brought up. You know, maybe we can, not now, but brainstorm other ideas and possibly look into it. Obviously, you have a lot on your plate, but, you know, if there's other ways to do it, then we could do it. So, that's good. Okay. Moving on. 7.7 all the way through 7:22. We wish the people in retirement well. We wish the people who are moving on well, and the people who are taking leave of absences well. So that's from those parts there. Any comment
you.
on that, Dr. Gallo? Any highlights?
No, just that when you see a lot of retirements here, all of those have been taken into account in the budget. They just hadn't been put on the agenda. Some people wanted to have their privacy for a longer time, and so there's nothing here that would be additional savings to what I talked about earlier.
Any comments from anyone? Yes, Ray?
Yeah, I'd just obviously like to congratulate everyone who is retiring. Obviously, other people are leaving for other reasons. But I wanted to make a particular comment about two long-serving teachers that my family has experienced personally. And that's Ellen Clifford, 5th grade teacher at PRS, and Laura Donovan, kindergarten teacher at PRS. Both of them, and I think they're the two senior serving teachers in the district, both with well over 30 years at the elementary level. And I was fortunate enough to have two children have Laura Donovan in kindergarten, and two different children have Ellen Clifford in 5th grade, kind of bookends and experience kind of the entry to PRS and the exit from PRS, both in tremendous ways and experiences, and just like to wish them both well and thank them for their long service.
We'll convey that. I would say that Laura Donovan actually is going to be doing some work next year, particularly in the area of coordination and professional development for the full-day kindergarten program. So
Great.
we couldn't find a better person with more expertise to do that.
Good. Moving on, number 8, other items as may not reasonably be known 48 hours in advance. We have an update?
Yep, well, John was at a conference on Thursday and Friday and had some really good news, I think, in general, to our town, and all of us benefit as a result, because MEMA and FEMA were there around the issue of the snow removal and plowing costs and so on, and what is likely to happen there, so.
Yeah, so, and I'm no expert in MEMA or FEMA, so I've never gone through it before, so I'm not sure what the end result will be. However, as I sat in the audience with the briefing, the emergency was made for the storm declared January 26th through the 28th. So MEMA, FEMA, I'd say it's FEMA, and I think MEMA administrators, but they're using any 72-hour window that a municipality may pick, okay, for the actual plowing cost. But the greatest thing, as I sat there, they group it into 3 different types of projects. One is the actual plowing. 2 is the sort of snow remediation things, okay, and 3 is the actual repairs, okay. So the plowing aspect of that is any 72 hours that they consider your best or your highest cost type terms for that storm. So I mean, you know, an example of that would be, you know, if the snow is still on the ground, if you never plowed and you did it 72 hours the next week with both of those, you know, that would be that 72 hours. So it sort of floats, but you know that the actual plowing is probably going to be somewhere around the 26th to the 28th. However, for the things like the snow removal, that's keyed on any time that you did snow removal, the first time you did snow removal. So, you know, as you're up on the roof removing the snow, they're sort of looking at it as like, well, that snow from the 26th to the 28th storm is still there, and that's what you're removing as well, so those costs will likely qualify.
Wow.
Okay, so, I mean, you know, we put in, into the town warrant, $244,000 for our snow remediation, excluding the Plymouth River amounts. So, you know, I think that as I sat in the audience, I'm interpreting, I think that we'll get a good chunk of that back. The reimbursement is supposed to be 75%. Now, I can't sit here guaranteeing I'm gonna get 75% of that 244, but it really sounded encouraging. Then also, other repairs, okay, any other repairs, whether they be temporary or permanent repairs, are also covered. And those go through the duration of the storm. Even though the declaration was the 26th to the 28th, what I interpreted from the meeting was that snow was still sitting there. That snow was still damaging. That, even though there was maybe 6 feet on top of it, right? That 3 feet that was sitting there was still there, so it's all part of the damages. So a lot of the damages that we had, I will also file claims for that, and I think it's likely that we'll get some type of reimbursement for that as well. Now, that would include, say, our deductibles, the deductibles for the insurance for, say, Plymouth River. We had the sun reflector shades at East School. I think that would be covered. Probably the $5,000 we had to pay for the East School elevator and air handle probably would be one of those expenses. And then also the effort that we put into it, the administrative overtime. So I'll have to have somebody, not administrative overtime, but the administrative aspect of compiling all this stuff. I'll have somebody compile these types of things, and that time can also be booked and included in the overall recovery. We're looked at as our school system, we're part of the town. Okay, so there's only one applicant, and the fire department is the lead applicant. They'll set the kickoff meeting. We'll be, of course, a big part of it, as well as Randy. Because Randy has, the bulk of the expenses. But like Hingham Housing, they have to be separate. Municipal Light has to be separate. So, I haven't talked to Paul, but I think that Chief Duff was there and Randy was there too. So I'm sure somebody's told Paul and Hingham Housing that they have to be their own applicant to try to get these benefits. Also, nonprofits, and just because we're on TV, nonprofits, St. Joseph's, Notre Dame, if those organizations sustain damages, they can also file an application for this, for MEMA recovery. The application has to be filed by May 13th. So if you want to be an applicant, it has to be filed by May 13th. We will, through the fire department, but any other nonprofit in town that may have sustained damage should file by May 13th. The nonprofit's rules are a little bit different than ours, but I sat there encouraged. I think that we will recover a significant portion of the monies we needed to expend to protect our properties during this horrible winter.
Excellent, John.
But some of that reimbursement would go back to the town because.
Oh, it's all going to the town. Yeah, this all will go to the town.
John mentioned the $244,000 of the $1.6 million that town meeting voted for the snow removal, which was all of the plowing and which was our roofs except for Plymouth River.
Correct.
Because of the insurance. So 244 of the town's 1.6 that we all voted at town meeting because it was unanimous, so we all did vote it, was school
That's
department.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the other things John's mentioned that we hadn't put in for some of the repair and so on, things, then,
We can
ultimately
include that,
would-
we'll include that in the claim, but still all the money will go to the town. It'll
Town,
just be
yeah.
a check because our books will have closed. Sue can work with the DOR. There was a representative there from the Department of Revenue too, which will help municipalities sort of, I guess, keep your books open while you're figuring out what this recovery would be and close them at the same time, because just with our municipal rules, finance rules, there's always hoops to jump, so. But Sue Nickerson will be in charge of that, so we will get some recoveries and she can work with the DOR, but I think
But it's like a
encouraging.
fourth bucket now, we said, in terms of all those costs.
be.
There are things we were paying for as a district, like
Yes.
overtime. And then there was the snow removal kinds of things that the town was going to be paying for. And then there were the things that we could get insurance coverage for, and this is like another
Right.
bucket that, into which there will be money to go to help with that.
Yeah, because we have lots of damage, a few $1,000s here and there that maybe add up to like 20, 50, or 50 or more $1,000s,
John, with the
Do you have a
damage
question?
that several of us saw along the boulevard at the high school, the brand-new plantings that we put in last year that were just crushed by the snow, would they qualify?
Ed, I'm not sure, but when I do the femur, I was gonna bring that up because we even had damage at the middle school curbing and stuff like that,
Well, I
and
don't
those
include the
trees
middle
that,
school, but yeah.
I would if I were doing the claim, and I'll bring that up at the meeting, but if I were doing the claim, I'd be looking to get those two to submit as well, so.
And the town has a lot of damage, similar, snow that broke a fence or bent a sign, those kinds of things that,
That'll add up, I mean.
Right. My understanding is they try to help you. FEMA's here to help us get all
we've heard
this.
that expression somewhere.
Yes, I know, right, yeah. That's why I said I've never been through this before, so I don't know what it will be at the end of the day. However, as I sat there, I was encouraged, I interpreted, I think that we will get some
DESE sometimes says we're here to help you.
significant money recovered. I don't know what that amount will actually be.
Well, that is wonderful news, John. Any other questions for John? Any other 48 items, Dr.?
Well, just, I mentioned earlier the YouTube thing on the social learning when Heather was here, but I would say that at the end of last week, 2 additional YouTubes went up. One of them was another superintendent's spotlight episode, and it was on literacy, English language arts, and Selene was there, Beth Robinson, our secondary reading coordinator, and Leslie Flanagan, our elementary literacy specialist, were on that. So that is now posted. And at the same time, School Scene, which is a little series that Ray started, the interview with Ray and Chuck Cormier over the grade 4 Cape Cod trip at Plymouth River is also aired. And so that happened just the end of last week. And then episode number 6 of the superintendent's spotlight will be taped tomorrow. So you can see any and all of those, and I mention this particularly for the new folks who, we didn't talk about this at the orientation, but if you go on the HCAM site, and you'll be able to link under the YouTubes to the superintendent spotlight, and you'll be able to see all 5 of the current episodes there, and within a week of the one coming tomorrow, that will be there. And the 2 School Scene programs are there as well. So it's all available on YouTube and on the HCAM site. So
Good. Subcommittee, project reports. Anything?
I have one thing for special ed, and Dot, you had mentioned this. Marissa Ronan is stepping down as the chair of the CPAC, and she has been serving for several years, and the CPAC is looking for some new leadership, so any parents who are interested, they've been doing a great job with programming and outreach, and have a Facebook page, and Marissa's done a lot of work, and it'd be a shame to see her go. And there's 2 more meetings. Tomorrow they meet at the library, and then June 9th, and they'll be finished for the year. But if anyone's interested in getting more involved, they would love the help.
And I did send out an X2 newsletter to all of our parents of children with IEPs. It went out on Thursday, I think, and talked about Marissa's request for some help, and also there was an attachment there for the SNAP program, the summer SNAP program. So that outreach did go, but I don't think we can say it enough times that Marissa's been there a long time, and dwindling forces helping her. So we hope that some parents will step up to the plate and help out on that.
Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
See you Thursday.